Therewith he sat him down by the hearth in the ashes at the fire, and behold, a dead silence fell on all. And at the last the ancient lord spake among them, an elder of the Phaeacians, excellent in speech and skilled in much wisdom of old time. With good will he made harangue, and spake among them. Alcinous, this truly is not the more seemly way, nor is it fitting that the stranger should sit upon the ground in the ashes by the hearth, while these men refrain them, waiting thy word. Nay, come, bid thy stranger arise, and set him on a chair inlaid with silver, and command the henchmen to mix the wine, that we may pour forth likewise before Zeus, whose joy is in the thunder, who attendeth upon reverend suppliants. And let the housewife give supper to the stranger out of such stores as be within. Now when the mighty King Alcinous heard this saying, he took Odysseus, the wise and crafty, by the hand, and raised him from the hearth, and set him on a shining chair, whence he bade his son give place, valiant Laodamas, who sat next to him and was his dearest. And a handmaid bare water for the hands in a goodly golden ewer, and poured it forth over a silver basin to wash withal, and drew to his side a polished table. And a grave dame bare wheaten bread, and set it by him, and laid upon the board many dainties, giving freely of such things as she had by her. So the steadfast goodly Odysseus did eat and drink. And then the mighty Alcinous spake unto the henchmen, Mix the bowl and serve the wine to all in the hall, that we may pour forth likewise before Zeus, whose joy is in the thunder, who attendeth upon reverend suppliants. I thought maybe today we can have a little education lesson, mostly for myself. We've heard of the term suppliant a few times, and in context it makes sense, but as usual there are cultural layers to it, period layers to it that have a slightly different meaning than you might just assume as someone asking for help. A suppliant in Greek culture, ancient Greek culture, is much more formal. It's almost a ritualistic role that has, or at least pleas to, religious weight. So in yesterday's passage, when it said that Odysseus was making prayer to Arete, he's doing so as a suppliant, which has this religious component to it. Sometimes in Greek culture, ancient Greek culture, you will hear suppliants called xenios, obviously tied to the word xenia that we've discussed ad nauseum before. Essentially, the ritual that happens with this is that a person, Odysseus in this case, places themselves in a position of vulnerability, even if it's symbolic. In this case, Odysseus is sitting in the ashes by the hearth. Maybe seems a little silly to us to see someone come into your house and just sit inside the fireplace. But they're performing a physical gesture, usually clasping at the knees, which is what we've been discussing a lot this chapter, when Nausicaa and Athena, in the form of the tour guide, was giving some advice to Odysseus as what to do when he enters the palace. Also, Odysseus having reservations about doing that to Nausicaa in the meadow or by the stream when they first met, partly because he was dirty and naked, but also I think just because of her age, who she was, etc. This is a much more formal place to be doing supplication. And as a suppliant, doing your prayer, you're essentially appealing to both moral and religious obligation of a host, so that what you're asking is tied to divine law, which gives us context for both what Echeneus is telling Alcinous, and then what Alcinous is repeating to his henchmen at the end there. Pour the wine before Zeus. Zeus is the god who attends upon the reverend suppliants. It's essentially, this whole act is specifically to Odysseus, but generally speaking to suppliants, asking for asylum or protection. This is one of those things that when we're adapting it for our prestige TV show or big budget movie, I don't know exactly how to stage this. It seems like there's a little bit lost in not the translation, but Homer isn't holding our hand and walking us through point by point exactly what's happening. So what we're left with is just kind of a little bit of a confusing mess. Odysseus comes in, he prays to Arete, obviously knowing Alcinous is there. He's praying to the whole hall, but he's giving it to Arete. I don't know exactly why he's doing it to her rather than Alcinous. There's probably something mixed up in the ritual that requires that. And then after he does that, before anyone even acts or reacts, Odysseus then goes and sits in the ashes of the hearth. There's a little bit of a tension because Alcinous hasn't responded to this yet. And so Echeneus then, as an elder, kind of whispers in Alcinous' ear and says, yo, this isn't proper. Fix this. Do something. And he tells him what to do. And then Alcinous nods his head or whatever and basically repeats word for word what he was advised to do. But like, how do you represent that? I don't know that the motions make sense to modern audiences. Why aren't they responding to him in the moment when he's making his plea? What do they do? Do they just stand there and watch him like mannequins as he gets up and goes and sit in the ashes of the hearth? There's a part of the picture that I feel like I'm missing. I wouldn't know how to stage this exactly. All of the supplication out of the way, they are moving forward to accept Odysseus into their halls. They're pouring forth some wine, giving him some food. They are doing Xenia. I still don't know if that's a noun or a verb. So join me here tomorrow as we find out what's going to happen between these folks. Until then, okay, goodbye. Odyssey is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. The show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Odyssey, written by Homer. Theme song by Neuroflow. You can support this show and other shows like it by going to patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.